to You're 18, Now What? Thank you for joining me on this great Tuesday. I'm Dr. Catherine Gilstein, and I am looking forward to empowering you with information about financial literacy and economic empowerment. I will continue to post on the second or fourth Tuesday of the month, but I will be adding to my podcast since I have had such great interviews lined up. Today, I am joined by Bob Frady, the co-founder and CEO of Property Lens. So he's going to share with us his journey to entrepreneurship, starting a business, exit strategies, and pivoting to the next role. Bob, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing? Tell us a little about you.
It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
It's funny, You're 18 Now What is resonates with me because my son just graduated from college on Sunday. So
congratulations.
I'm like, get out. I wrote the last check. So a little bit about me that something most people don't know is my grandparents were immigrants from Lebanon. So didn't speak any English when they came here. And here they are 2 generations later, and their grandson did okay. So, nice. And I know a lot of folks are, entrepreneurship was not something that, I didn't know any professional people growing up. My one uncle owned a bowling alley. My aunts and uncles were all laborers, and my dad was a truck driver. And my grandmother was a buyer and seller of real estate. Didn't speak, she's 4'11", didn't speak much English, but boy, could she buy and sell a house. Back in the day when women weren't encouraged to do that kind of stuff. And
we weren't allowed to get our own credit cards in our names until only 50 years ago. How scary is that?
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's impressive. So impressive.
The point being, I didn't come from anything. And still managed to get on the path of entrepreneurship. And the way I arrived there is I was always taught, okay, you should be a good boy, go to school, do good, join a company, retire from that company. That was sort of the thinking at the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I did my part, and I discovered I was spectacularly good at one thing, which is getting fired. So
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm intensely curious, and I love to figure out how to do stuff. Like I love puzzles and all sorts of stuff. So I would get into these roles, and they would say, figure this out. And I would say, okay. And I would figure it out. And then I would say, I figured that out, and this and this and this. And they're like, well, why don't you just focus on what we asked you to do? And I would say things like, why don't you just go jump in a lake? And then they would say, why don't you hit the door? So I was pretty good at that. And then finally, I was 52 years old, and it happened one more time. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm 52. Now what? I had a family, I had debts, I had a mortgage, all that stuff. And
it's a little easier to get fired when you're in your 20s.
Yeah, in your 20s, you don't care. It's like, I'm going to Bermuda for a month, leave me alone. Or Bali is where the kids go, I guess, these days.
Nice.
And so I had luckily had a little side hustle that was called Hazard Hub, which was geospatial data, because I'm a data nerd at the end of the day. And I was like, all of a sudden, it was like, oh boy, you need to make this work. And so I had 2 co-founders. We took no money the first couple of years. We bootstrapped everything. I did all the consulting I could. And my wife was a huge supporter of us and chased the entrepreneurial dream, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And it turns out I was really good at it. I really like it. So all of those years, I would sit back and say, you're not good enough to run a company, because that's what I knew. I didn't know anybody who ran a company. So having sort of taken the entrepreneurial plunge, I was like, man, I wasted so many years not trusting my own judgment to just jump in. You might fail. Guess what? You can't hit a home run if you don't get up at bat. And so finally decided to get up at bat, and here we are. Now I'm on podcasts as a successful entrepreneur.
So a lot of people think about entrepreneurship, starting a business, going into a business, and my biggest thing is say just start. Okay, especially when you're younger, because if you start and it doesn't work out, there's still a plan B. There's plenty of time to do
Mhm.
something else, find your calling of what you're good at and where you belong. Um, but people don't think about how to get out of business. So when you had this company, how did you know, and what was your exit strategy?
So I had a venture capitalist ask me a question. He said, would you rather own 100% of a $10 million company or 10% of a $100 million company? Because the, the math is the same. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
given my spectacular ability, I want to own 100% of a $10 million company. And that fundamentally changes the way that you approach business. So we didn't raise any money. Well, we raised one very small piece of money from some friends, but we bootstrapped the rest of it. And so a discussion that we had, and the other thing that he said to me, he's like, you have to begin with the end in mind, which is, what do you want to accomplish out of this? And we said, if
Absolutely.
so, the three of us, the three co-founders said, if the business sells for this much in 5 years, we're going to sell it. So from the very beginning, we already had an exit strategy. About halfway through, we raised that number. We doubled it and said, okay, somebody has to give us this much, and then we'll sell it. And then we actually sold it for, above that number, because the market, people were calling us all the time. Now, the benefit that we had is, because we didn't raise any money and because we hired behind the curve, we were profitable in our third year. September 2019 is when we hit profitability. It was is a glorious, glorious month, and never looked back. So we didn't need to sell. It was one of those questions where, what do you want to get out of your life? And so, and what I always recommend to entrepreneurs is that you always talk to people. You never know where your exit's going to come from. So we talk to bankers, we talk to VCs, we talk to private equity, we talk to strategic partners, because that's my job as the CEO. My job is to talk to people, is to be the connection to the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had our third co-founder was 77 at the time, so he wanted to spend more time with his grandchildren, and so I had an option. I had a choice to make, and the choice was, I could kind of screw him over and pay him a discount for his shares, or I could try to give him what he really earned. And so, because we had always had these discussions from the beginning, it was pretty straightforward. We were just going to sell it. And because we had been talking to people the entire time, when it finally came time to sell it, we just reached back out to people and said, hey, what do you think this business is worth? And they all
Right. Now we're
coalesced.
ready.
Yeah, they
Mm-hmm.
all coalesced around a number. That number
Nice.
was good to us. And so we went out into the market and sold it 6 months later. It was a very quick. It seemed like it was really long at the time, but in retrospect, it was very quick. But we had a plan from the beginning that we had built this business to sell it in a 5 to 7 year time horizon. And so we did. But you got to start with that end in mind.
I agree. I think starting with the end in mind is important. It's kind of like retiring. There's only two reasons you retire: one, you have to, or two, you want to. There's
Mhm.
no other option. So you have to definitely always think ahead. So pivoting to your next role,
Mhm.
right, and starting a new business, what was that like? Scary, not so scary? You believe in yourself now?
Well,
A
you
little
do
more
have
confidence?
you have a certain set of hubris after you've successfully done something. Um, but it was more of a curiosity than anything else. When I sold the company, I bought a house, and I was looking for something. I was looking for like a Carfax for houses, and I couldn't find one. So I'm like, I know how to do this. So my co-founder and we built it, and we thought it was easier this time because we had already gone through the process once. We know what the process looks like. And just like anything, the second time is easier than the first because you don't have all the surprises. Well, you have different surprises, but
different surprises
you
for different.
yeah, you've done it. At least done something like it before. So you do have a sense of calmness. I forgot how hard it is to build and grow a business, because your memory is a wonderful thing. It flushes out the bad stuff very, very quickly.
Oh, it does. It's nice
And
though.
yeah, it is
And then
nice.
you get back into it and it's like, wow, do I remember making all of these phone calls? Do I remember sending all these emails? Do I remember doing all of this?
Yep. Yep. And that's the stage that we're
Mhm.
in right now. So, but it's also like, hey man, we've built a fantastic product and we really believe in what we're doing. And it may be a screaming success. It may be a moderate success. It may not be a success. Those are all possible outcomes. But at the end of the day, you have to have the self-belief that, you know what, just take your time, just keep moving, keep plodding along, and something will happen, something good. Things tend to work out the way that they should. And so you just keep believing that. It's a very confident sounding thing, but it's just a mantra. Just believe in yourself. Just believe in yourself. You've made enough good decisions. Just believe in yourself. And I see a lot of people who don't start businesses because they don't believe in themselves. And at the end of the day, starting a business is an ego play. It's like you think that you know better than somebody else, and damn it, you're going to prove it. And so big deal, it's an ego play. Just so what? It is. Go do it. But keep grinding, keep believing, keep working. And that's the one thing that we do really well. We just grind. I just love grinding. I was the kind of guy who, when I was a musician, I loved to practice. Loved to practice because that's how you get better. That grind is
Oh,
what just
absolutely.
wins.
And it's the consistency, day over day. It's
Yep.
day over day. And I had this discussion the other day with someone, a former supervisor of mine told me, just trust the process. As long as you trust the process, it's going to work out, and you can't deviate from that. And I think sometimes getting fired is the best thing that could happen to you. And like you said, it always seems to work out. And I know from experience of myself, and oh my gosh, it was just about a year and a half ago, my youngest daughter was let go. She was the first of the wave of layoffs in her
Yep.
industry. And she was young. She was devastated. And I said to her, I said, it's not you. You didn't get fired. You're part of an entire people that's getting let go. And I'm like, this is the best thing that could have happened to you. Because why? What are you talking about? I have bills to pay. I'm like, you do, but you have some savings. You'll be okay. I said, and it just gives you an opportunity to really take a step back and think about what you want and where you want to be. And she wound up relocating. I'm like, you could relocate anywhere in the country. You could relocate anywhere in the world. You could start over. Like it could be the biggest blessing, but I think it's how you approach it. And like you said, believe in yourself and just keep going.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I hadn't really thought about this until just now. But my entrepreneurial journey began when I got fired from a job I loved more than any other job that I've had. I was the VP of digital marketing for Live Nation back when Live Nation was brand new, and built our marketing team into a powerhouse. And you get a new boss, and there's always some instability with that. So I got the first new boss. Well, the first boss was great. Second new boss was great. Third new boss didn't like it all. And I
Not so
got
much.
fired. I got fired from that job. And it was one of those jobs where I was a musician growing up. I love concerts. It was one of those do what you love kind of a thing. And I got fired from it. And it was devastating.
Oh,
But
that
at the
hurts. Yes.
time, my co-founder, who would become my co-founder, hired me to say, hey, I got some major accounts to take care of and I need your help. And I said, okay. So I went and did that. And he was throwing me a bone, basically. That's where our partnership was rekindled. That's where we learned about what we wanted to do in the future. And I didn't know it at the time, but that was the key point in starting me on the entrepreneurial journey. And so, yeah, getting fired, it was devastating. Like sit on your couch and stare at the ceiling for 6 hours a day, kind of devastating. And it worked out that it was probably one of the best things that happened to me, even though at the time it was incredibly painful, just incredibly painful.
Oh, absolutely. At the time, it is devastating. I remember getting fired from a job because I did what was right for the customer. And
Yep.
my boss said, well, you can't. I'm like, oh, well, then fire me. And if you want to fire me, that's okay. I'm okay with it because I know I did the right thing by the customer. And
Mm-hmm.
they let me go. And I smiled, didn't look back. Bye, see ya. And I had a family, I had kids, I had a husband. I got
Mm-hmm.
home in the middle of the day. And my husband's like, what are you doing here? Oh, got fired. No big deal.
It
I'll
was,
figure it out. It'll be fine.
the entrepreneurship and the instability that comes along with um, getting fired is something that your spouse bears and has no control over. And
Mhm.
it's very, very frustrating for them.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
they have to bear with it and they can't do anything about it. And that's a
Mhm.
very frustrating position to be in. So you need to make sure that you're at least aware that, yeah, you're suffering, but if you have a partner, that partner is suffering as well. It's not the same, but it is to them just as painful as it is to you. And you got to be aware of that, or else you could certainly end up divorced or in a bad spot. And
Oh, absolutely. You need to be supportive. And he was very supportive at the time. Fast forward a couple of years, and he's looking for a new job, not because he got laid off, but he was just looking for a new job, always looking for a new job. My husband's always looking for a new job. I don't know why. He's always on the lookout. I'm like, why? Don't you like what you? He's like, yeah, but you never know. You never. He always says you never know. So anyway, he's looking for a job. He's got an interview. They literally fly him to California for the interview. 3 hours, flying back home, call him the next day and say, hey, yeah, we offered you the job, but we really don't have a budget to pay. I'm like, okay. I was like, wow. So you just never know what's going to happen. But he's been laid off before. I've been laid off before, and you just have to be supportive because it's frustrating on both sides, and it's a different kind of frustration. But I think but having that support and believing in your partner and being able to do that is so important. Um, Here's what I want to ask you. Tell me about your new business. Tell me
Mhm.
about Property Lens and let us
Yep.
know what's happening there. How did that start?
So when we bought this house, um, I knew stuff about this house because I'm a data guy, and I knew what some of the risks were, and I knew what some of the things to look out for were, not just from our own data, but from friends of mine in the industry and a lot of other people who I knew who gave me information about this property that was never disclosed by the selling agent, was never disclosed, never uncovered by my agent. And I use that information to say, okay, there's some issues with this house. Am I willing to accept them, even because I know that these are issues, like a Carfax for houses?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked around for one, and there wasn't one. So I used that information to save 10% off the listing price of this house. I'm like, yeah, I like this place, but I only like it at this money, not at that money. And they took it. So I was like, holy cow, that was great.
That tells me they knew that there were issues and just hoping nobody found them. But because you did, they're like, we could work with them.
Yeah. And
Always
so
negotiate.
always negotiating. And so I
Mhm.
I I thought about it, and it's like, this is pretty cool product. If I could put this together, it would be pretty cool. So I do what I always did. I said, and I called this the $1,000 business start, where I pay it. I leave a budget of $1,000 to pay a designer, and I write out in chicken scratch. Here's what I want this to look like, and I pass it to the designer, and the designer makes it look really cool, and then I show it to people and say, if you had this, would you think it was valuable? And enough people said yes that I'm like, okay, well, I know what I want to do next, and that's what started it. So I started both businesses for $1,000, and most
I
people
love that.
spend way too much money,
Mm-hmm.
building a product without understanding whether or not people actually want it. So I like design it first. Spend your time thinking about what you want it to look like, design it and show it to people and see what they say. And that's what we did. I took it to the company that acquired us, and they're like, no, it's not us. I'm like, okay. And I had the economic freedom to say, I'll see you later. And so I did. And so I fired myself. It was a good paying job. It was easy work. And I was like, I am so frustrated by corporate America. I got to get out and do my own thing. So yeah, decided to put it together, started it, launched it back in October. So far it's going pretty good. You can go to PropertyLens. If you're thinking about buying a house, we pull together thousands of pieces of data, some of which you could maybe find on your own, some of which you can't. And then use it to say, this property has these issues, ask these questions to make sure that you're comfortable in the purchase decision that you make before you put your money down.
I think it's great. It's a perfect niche for the market. Definitely something that's needed because there's a lot of times it's supposed to be on the seller's disclosure and it's not. So
it's
if you can find
interesting.
it.
I've gotten bitten by this. I bought a condo in California a couple of years ago, and then I was doing a demonstration, so I decided to put the condo through the Property Lens. I ran a Property Lens report for it. Turns out there was a fire in the condo that
Oh my
I didn't
God.
know about, was never disclosed because it didn't happen with the current owner. It happened with the owner before them. So the current owners never knew that there was a fire there. So you see this a lot in real estate. As properties turn over, you lose the history of the property. We maintain the history. And I happened to see the renter this weekend because I was in California. And I said, there was a fire there a couple of years before we bought this place. And they're like, it was probably an electrical fire because the electricity in this place is kind of weird. It just responds poorly. And I was like, man, you're not going to see that in an inspection unless it's
Interesting.
an obvious sign, because inspectors can't move things to look for
Correct.
problems, or they don't. It's a visual inspection. So yeah, because of somebody who didn't disclose that, I never knew about it. And would it have changed my ability to buy the place? No, I probably would have bought it anyway.
Could
But I
have
would
gotten a
have
better
gotten
deal though.
I would have either gotten a better deal or I would have gotten a better inspection. And I would say,
Mm.
okay, let's call in an electrician, move the stove, just check for any signs of damages, make sure everything's up to code, and put the money into the condo proactively rather than waiting for some big old surprise to happen that usually adds a zero to the cost. Yeah, and I was like, oh
Yeah,
damn it. It's like, I wish I had this when I bought the place. So and we see that all the time. All the time.
all the time. How are your clients feeling about the response that you're giving them? So when they come to you and say, "Look, I'm looking at this property. Can you run it through and let me know?" What's the feedback been? I mean, I know you're fairly new, but
Yeah, the feedback has been, if I could classify it, I think the feedback has been that people are looking for peace of mind. Buying a house is very stressful. There's the
yeah.
economic stress. Can I afford this? We
Mhm.
help with that a little bit. And then there's the what's hiding in here. People aren't unhappy about a house because they paid too much, because what the purchase price is. They're unhappy because they paid too much, and then there's other expenses that they just never saw coming. And
Mm-hmm.
it happens a lot. So we give people some level of peace of mind the same way a Carfax report does. Just because you've had the car serviced properly doesn't necessarily mean that bad things won't happen to it. But it does give you some level of assurity that, hey, at least it was serviced properly. And we provide a similar type of a service to say, here's everything we know about this property going back as long as we can. Make your decision accordingly. So yeah, it's peace of mind. And they look at it and like, well, sometimes the report's clean and they're like, this is great. I have no trouble paying this for this house because it's clean. And then sometimes there are things that they want to ask about to get that peace of mind, to know that it's at least not overlooked. At least they asked the question.
Mm-hmm. So what's the plan for this business? Do you have a timeline for this one?
World domination. So yeah, we talked about that at the beginning, and we did it differently this time. It's like Hazard Hub was a niche business. It was really important for a small sliver of the world. This is a much bigger potential business. So I envision naming rights. I envision Super Bowl ads. I envision all of that stuff. Will we get there? It's possible.
I definitely think it's possible. Having, as you put it, in Carfax for houses, I think it's super important because a lot of times you're not the second buyer. You're the third or the fourth buyer, and the house has been sitting there for 50, 60 years, and you don't know what happened from the first thing. I remember, buying a house and it already had a deck on it. And when I had the inspection done, they're like, well, the deck isn't up to code. Well, I didn't put the deck on. I bought the house. The deck was there already. Nope, got to redo it. I was like, wait a second, that wasn't in the budget, So I've been there. I think it's super helpful, and I think it's definitely something that's needed. And oddly enough, it hasn't been there.
Right. It's really hard to build. There's two really complex things that you have to do successfully to build this. The first is that you have to build the technology to pull all the data, and you have to build the data. That's really hard. Luckily, that's what I've specialized my career in, and my team specializes in. The second part is to get people to think about things slightly differently. That's much harder, because sellers know this and buyers know this, and everybody is paid by this person. And so everybody's comfortable with this gap, except for the person who has to pay for the house.
Who's paying
so all of the focus in selling is on the seller and not enough on the buyer. So changing that mentality is always a challenge. But it's just time. Just keep working the process. Things will work out.
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen it where I've gone to look at houses, and the realtor sitting there and like, oh, they put this wallpaper in and it was $50 a roll. I don't care. It's ugly. I'm taking it down.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes I bought a house one time that was a country cottage, and I'm like, I'm gonna gut this place, but I never told the seller that, because they're like, look at this stove, it's incredible. I'm like, it's going. So
it's not going to work for me.
Yeah, you want to go in with your eyes wide open, and that's what we try to bring, is that transparency. Listen, you fall in love with locations, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like this house, I fell in love with the location. It was just, I knew that there were some things we were going to need to do, and I addressed all of them when we renovated, because I knew exactly what the dangers were facing this place. I knew what we had to do, and we did it. But I knew it going in, so I felt much more comfortable about it than if I hadn't known going in.
And I think knowing what the issues are going in when you're purchasing a home, then you could figure out what your renovation budget is, and you know where to begin of what's going to be the most pressing issue, what's going to be, is the electrical the most pressing issue, or is the deck going to fall off and I need to do that first when that wasn't my plan to begin with. So I think definitely giving buyers that insight is just so helpful.
Yep, that's why we're here, and it's what we aim to do, for sure.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much, Bob. So reach Bob Frady at propertylens.com
Yep.
and check him out, especially if you're looking to buy a new house. Reach out. I think it's so, so helpful. And just remember, one size not fits all for anything. So visit my website, set up some time with me to create a personalized action plan based on your current financial situation. No matter where you are in your career, you deserve to have representation. Be open to learning, be open to listening, ask questions. What more do you want to know? Visit my website at your18nowwhat.com and drop me a line. Send a question or a comment, and any questions or comments will be responded to by either email or on the next podcast. Remember, be invaluable for what you share, not what you know. See you next time on Your 18 Now What, where you could always find the latest podcast episode to listen to, follow, share, and subscribe. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Bob. It's been great.
Oh, you're welcome, Catherine. It's my pleasure.